Many years ago, I lived. I lived dead. My name is Crispin. I was to be burned at the stake for suspicion of witchcraft. I was no witch or sorcerer. I was a necromancer. I practiced in secret in the graveyards and cemeteries. I was forced onto the stake. It took 12 men to capture me. While on the stake, I pleaded for mercy. People threw rocks, food, sharp sticks, and nails. For an hour this continued. For an hour I was tortured, blood dripping from all of my body. After which a man in a robe held together with a rope around his waist, a cross around his neck. This man was a priest. He came up to me and filled a bucket, 3 others behind him carrying piles of wood. They set the wood in a cone around the stake to which I was hung. The priest poured the bucket of liquid among the wood and myself, to which a torch was thrown. I hung there, panicking among the stake. My feet began to warm, then my legs, to my waist, and so on. I cried in pain. I prayed, not to God, but to the devil that was to spare me. I burned from the bottom of my feet to the top of my head. I burned for another hour before it had begun to rain. A large crowd still stood. The 4 priests standing the closest with their heads down and hoods up. The day went by until the next. It was still raining, and my body was no longer alight. Later, the priests had returned. I felt their presence. I was alive. But how? Was my prayer answered? Or did God accept my cry for mercy? I was able to slightly open my eyes and see the 4 priests standing in front of me. I do not know how I saw, for I had no eyes, or even lips, or ears, all but fried, melted skin and bone. Below me laid a pile of ash and mush of what once was my organs, and the wood set into a cube shape. Yet, how is it I live? I did not care. I first moved my head. The priests looked down, with their hoods up. I then moved my hands and fingers, then my feet and toes. I could feel the rain upon me. I let out a yell of vengeance and snapped the rope off my feet and then my wrists. I flung myself to the ground. The priests were gawking. I pointed at them and spoke, "Now you die." They split in all directions. I chased after the first priest, the one who carried the bucket. He ran as if a demon from hell was after him. I ran faster and eventually caught up. I grabbed him by the throat. He gurgled a few words. "By God, how do you live?" I answered, "I am a spawn of the devil." I proceeded to clutch my hand harder on his throat and ripped it out. Blood gushed everywhere, down his robe, forming a puddle at his knees. I went on to track down the other 3. I found the second one, he who carried the firewood. He ran with such speed, just as the other did. I eventually caught him. He spoke to me, "Demon, go back to hell." I placed my right hand on his ear and ripped it from his head. Blood spraying for a brief moment, then down his side. I replied to him, "I will meet you there." I proceeded to kill him. I swiftly bent back his head, causing a snap. He was nearly headless, the dark blood pouring like a fountain. Later, I found the 3rd priest, he who placed the wood. Again, he ran from me with such speed, and I caught him. He said nothing. "Do it." So I did. I turned around and punched my foot into his back and broke him in half. It took me the next day to find the 4th priest, the one who threw the torch upon me. I smiled. "You killed me. You will die in a special way." I drew my arm back, hand in a fist. He pleaded, "Have mercy." I whispered, "No." I blasted my hand into his chest and ripped out his heart. It beat in my burnt hand and then suddenly stopped. Again, his robes absorbed large amounts of blood and a puddle formed at his knees.